Let me get over there. Yep, that's in there. I just hit go live. And I need to get the right angle. No. All right. Let's see. Let's see when we have the right angle. Can you tell me, can you see me on live? Is that okay? Let me see if this is the right. Who's watching? Carrie, don't watch yet. I'm not ready. Okay. This is for tacos. Okay, this we can clear for the next round. All right. And I don't have the right angle there. For a tiny bit. I had it all lined up and then someone in my house came over and moved it today. I won't name names. But it was not my children. Yeah, I think that's good. All right. Are we ready? Yay! Hi, Michelle. Oh my goodness. All right. Let me know when you want me to start talking. Okay. I'm not good. Oh. Set. Scale. Okay. If I have glasses on, but that's okay. 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 Oops. 15. All right, quick. What's 12 times 15? Yep. Oh, a bowl would be good. Thank you. Note to self, if we're doing more of these, I need more bowls. Which I never thought I would ever say. Yes, I am starting this early. All right. Okay. And I reposted in Cook for Love and on whatever that we're live now. I have like 17 messages right now. I don't know what they are, and I don't know if I should go look at them, but I think maybe not. Yeah, maybe. In case it's anything, if someone's struggling to get on. It's really cute and thinks that I can help them. Hi, everybody. Now the question is, from this angle, can you really see what I'm doing, or do I need to adjust it? From this angle, it is good. Okay. It's too tiny. Oh, and let me make it bigger on my screen. Sorry, everybody. I'm going to go off screen for a second. All right. I think that's the right one. There we go. Oh, glasses. Excellent. Oh, good. That's much better. It was a tiny, tiny picture and I couldn't see anything. Okay. Reminding me I'm supposed to do something. Don't worry about it. All right, I think we should probably start at 210 anyway, even regardless of the numbers, in case people just got waylaid. In case people are like me, they forgot. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first Facebook Live event. Certain things that you should know. Number one, oh, now my computer's trying to do an update. Okay, hang on. Let me cancel that. Sorry. Darn it. All right, hang on. Cancel. Cancel and close. Sorry, I'm leaning in a very funny direction without trying to move my camera. And I can't find it. Okay, hang on. And done. Okay, let's see if it's back right around where it should be. Let me know if that angle's not good, or let Sarah know and she'll let me know. Hi, everybody. Welcome to my kitchen and welcome to our first Facebook Live. Today we are going to be doing Mexican feast since it's Cinco de Mayo and Taco Tuesday. So few things you should know. Number one, I am a disaster in the kitchen, which I think is a surprise to everybody. Everyone kind of thinks that I'm ultra organized, and those who know me really laugh at that because I'm extremely disorganized. And I am like the Swedish chef, which is why that picture was there versus a Martha Stewart. So we'll get that out of the way. Number two, I hate being in front of the camera, so bear with me. I think we could play a drinking game whenever I do my nervous laugh. Have a drink. You probably won't be able to complete the meal, but we'll give it a shot. And we are going to be starting today with making homemade tortillas. Now, if you don't have the time for this, we all know that there are other brands out there. Malathi makes a beautiful mix that has nice soft tortillas. Siete has them, Mikey's, and then there's a few gluten-free options. For those of you who are looking to mind your calories, Boston lettuce, is the leaf of that is great as a taco shell, and so are the new jicama wraps from Trader Joe's. So those are just a few different options if you don't feel like making tortillas. What we do in our house is we make usually a double or triple batch of tortillas, and we put it in a mason jar and just store it in the fridge, and then pull out the amount we need to make a tortilla each time, or make a batch and have them in the freezer, because they do actually defrost pretty well, and they're still soft and pliable, which is great. So we're going to start off with our KitchenAid, not our KitchenAid, our Cuisinart. If you don't have a food processor, you can easily do this in a bowl with your hands. The main thing you want to make sure is that you whisk your dry ingredients first, and when you add in your fat, that you really, really blend it so it almost looks like kind of like a coarse cornmeal is the consistency you're looking for. You just want to make sure the fat is throughout it. So no worries if you don't have a food processor, but I do have one and it just makes life easier. So wheat starch, all the recipes are on Cook for Love. This is the Cook for Love tortilla mix, and the recipes I believe are attached somewhere. Sarah did that. Oh, another point. I can't respond to comments that are being made because if I try to look at them, I'm going to be really, really distracted because number one, I am blind, so I would need my glasses. And number two, I am very, very distractible, so I would totally go off tangent. So I'm going to try to stay on tangent, but Sarah is on a call with me and I have earphones in so she can read me the comments and read me the questions. There might be moments when I can't address it right away, but I'll get to it as soon as I can. So wheat starch, tapioca, Metamucil. If you don't have Metamucil, you can use psyllium husk, but use half the amount because Metamucil is half psyllium and half sugar. Metamucil is used because it's a great binder, and it also adds much needed fiber to the low protein diet. And then we're going to add some xanthan gum, which is also a binder because we don't have gluten in there. And then we are going to add a little bit of baking powder. And then we're going to add some salt. And we're going to put that in the food processor. We're going to go just pulse it twice, 2 or 3 times. And then we're going to add shortening. The shortening goes in. Hang on. And put that. And then you're going to blend probably like 10, 12 pulses is probably enough. One of the tricks I learned, because I just totally forgot about it until I saw that wheat starch cloud, if you take a kitchen towel and you dampen it and you put it over your mixer or your KitchenAid, you get less of that, that dusting that we always get with wheat starch. And now if you look at this, I don't know if you can see it great on that camera because of the lighting and everything. I'm actually going to turn on another overhead light because I think that will help. It looks a little bit like a cornmeal. It's just a very, very small, not even pebbles, but just looks a little fluffier. So let me turn on the other light. Sorry, hang on. Going off camera. There. I don't know if that might help. So we've done that. And that's it for the mix. So this mix would now go in my freezer. Or for this case, we're just going to use it all. So the mix goes in. And then we want to add warm water to it. So for each tortilla that you make, it would be, I just double check the amounts. It's 25 grams of tortilla mix plus a tablespoon of water. So I just did the entire thing, which is then 180 grams of water, because we're going to be making 12 tortillas. So you can see here, it comes together super, super fast. Now we tend to do small tacos, but if you want a burrito or a more substantial wrap, you would just do 2 or 3 of these and roll it out into one big circle. And they are only 1 milligram of fee each. So making 3 means it's making a bigger one means it's 3 milligrams. So nominal amounts of fee, which is great. Okay. Now we're going to let this sit because we just have to give the water time to absorb the starches. So it's going to sit for 15 minutes. And now chances are it's going to sit for longer than that because we're going to move on to the next recipe. It's totally fine for it to sit. It can even sit a day or 2 in the fridge without it being an issue. So don't worry about the exact time, but it needs to sit for at least 15 minutes. All right. And we're going to set that aside. Now, one of the things I use when I am rolling out the tortillas is this is a cheese from the dollar store, a Parmesan cheese grater, not cheese grater, cheese, what's the word? cheese pourer, where you just kind of can sprinkle. It's great for everything. So the wheat starch is in there. It's always in my cabinet. It makes life a little bit easier. So I apologize that we're breaking this up a little bit, but we're going to come back to that since it's sitting for 15 minutes. Sarah, if there's any questions, you can ask them now before I move on to the next thing. Nothing up. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Okay, I'm going to move the food processor out of the way and put it on the floor where I'll probably trip over it. And next up, we're going to start on veggie tacos. Now, this recipe, this is probably we have a few taco recipes. There's the mushroom tacos on Cook for Love, which I absolutely love. There's also a fajita recipe, which is really good. But this vegetable taco recipe is probably our favorite. What I tend to do when I'm making it is I make a batch that's big enough for the entire family, and I add seasoned black beans to the high protein portion. So that way we're all eating the same thing, but we're getting a little protein in our meal. You could easily add chicken breast to it as well that's been seasoned with taco seasonings. And the vegetables that you use are up to you. You can definitely change them, but what we do is a combination of butternut squash, red onions, cauliflower, and pepper. Yep, that's all of them. I'm going to bring it over right now. Sorry, I was supposed to be more organized. It was supposed to be right there, and I was supposed to magically have it appear, but that's not the story, which shouldn't be surprising. Okay, so we don't always do it because I don't like to be too rigid, but we really try to make life a little bit easier in terms of planning because I am not organized. We always have pizza on Friday, so that way that's a day when we don't have to think about it. We almost always have Mexican on Tuesday, but we change up the fillings, and then we do Walk-in Wednesday, where we do Asian food. We'll do a cooking demo of that too if I ever get over the trauma of this one. So you can change the vegetables based on what you have, and you can change the vegetables just to add more variety. It's delicious with potatoes. It's delicious with Brussels sprouts. If it's too high in Phi, you can always do more onions and peppers to lower it. You can also do a low-protein Mexican rice. There's a recipe on the site that will then add some bulk to it if you're adding less vegetables. But anyway, this is where we're going to go. We're going to start with butternut squash, which I think people kind of get a little overwhelmed by because it is a pain in the neck to prep. And I'm only going to do a quick prep. I've already prepped what we need, but I'm just going to demonstrate it for you so you kind of know how to handle it. Butternut squash is surprisingly delicious in Mexican food. I think it's the sweetness with the heat just adds a really, really nice flavor, and it's lower in protein than sweet potatoes, which is why I tend to use it. And you'll see that I use it in a lot of different recipes just because it is one of my favorites. So usually what I do is I use the neck for one thing and then the bottom part for the other. So this is what I would call the neck, and this is the rounder part that has the seeds. And it's a little bit harder to peel. It's a little bit harder to scoop out. So for this, we're just going to prep the neck for this particular recipe because we don't need the entire thing. So you cut off the neck, and what you're going to do with a knife is you're just going to come down and peel it. And you're going to go around and peel the whole thing. For those of you who are saying right now, can you buy prepped butternut squash? Absolutely. The only thing I say about that is you just don't know how long it's been sitting there. It's not always the freshest. But if it looks really good, why not? And you want to think about what size you want it to be based on the meal that you're having. So for this, we probably want, I'd say probably about a ½ inch, anywhere between a 1/4 and a ½ inch dice. So I've peeled off all of the skin. I'm going to discard that. One of the things that I found was very, very helpful in culinary school was to have a discard bowl. It just really makes life easier. You just take whatever you're not using and you throw it in a bowl. It's just to get rid of it. So you're going to come and you're going to slice this way down through it, probably about 1/4 inch slices. So it's going to go slice down, and slice down. Now that I have this, I'm going to take the flat end, and the flat end is going to go on the bottom. So I have 2 slices here. Flat end is on the bottom, so it's nice and steady, and I'm going to cut it into strips. Now that it's all in strips, I'm going to turn it the other way, and I'm going to cut it into cubes. So it actually really isn't that hard to handle once you get the hang of it. And we're going to put that aside. And next up, we're going to do an onion. I like a red onion. You can do a sweet onion. You can do a regular onion. But I happen to like red onions in this dish. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut off this little knobby bit here, not the root, the end where it got pulled from the greens. So cut off that. It's going to go in my discard bowl. And then I'm going to cut it through the root in half. The root is a magical thing that I think most people tend to chop off, and then it's harder to hold the onion together. But if you let the root do the job, it holds the onion for you. So in this recipe, I'm not looking for cubes of it. I'm looking for slivers, so it will hold together. So what I'm going to do is just clean off this outer bit. The root is on. I'm going to cut just a tiny bit of it so it's all edible, but it's still doing the job of holding it together. So it's still holding together, but that little hairy bit is gone. Next, I'm going to, again, when you're cutting a vegetable, try to always have it flat somewhere so that it's steady. So I'm going to have it cut on, I can't speak right now. It's going to go right on the cutting board like this. And what I'm going to do is slice through the root, and I'm going to make wedges or slivers. So now you see when it goes on the roasting pan, it's all held together, so it's not going to burn. So it will all cook at the same time as the butternut squash. So I'm going to continue with this. And this recipe, like I said, uses about half of the exact measurements are on the site, but it uses about half of a butternut squash, half of a large red onion or a full smaller one. And then it takes one full bell pepper and half of a head of cauliflower. So now we have our wedges all done, and we're going to put those in the bowl. Okay, next up is cauliflower. First thing to look for, especially now when it's harder to get vegetables and they're maybe not as fantastic as they normally are, is if there's black spots on the cauliflower, just take your knife and kind of shave it, for lack of a better word, to just get rid of the black spots. And this was cauliflower I just bought the other day, but it just wasn't at its peak. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your knife and you're going to cut around this core, because what you want are little florets. So to make life easier, you just kind of go around and cut out that core. And now again, you want to break it up. Remember, it's going to be in a taco. You want it relatively small. You're going to break it up into florets. And it's okay if you have to cut it, if it doesn't break, because even those nice edges will caramelize better. So the more edges you have, kind of the better it can be. And that's the cauliflower done. This, and we'll move that out of the way. Next up, we have a pepper. I'm not a big fan of green peppers, just personal preference, but I do love red and yellow and orange ones, but use whatever you like. And you're just going to cut around that stem. That. And take away all of the little white bits if there's any there. So this one here, you can see the rib in it. We're just going to get rid of that. And we're going to cut it into strips first, about that thick. And then we're going to cut it across this way. So they're probably about half-inch cubes, I'd say. And they're going to go right here. And you're going to keep going. Okay. And this way, turn them and cut. Okay. And in it goes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to combine the vegetables. And again, remember, there's flexibility in what vegetables you use. And the other thing that I want to talk about are seasonings. The reason why there's 4 million chicken dishes is because, and everyone keeps developing them, is chicken tastes like chicken. The reason why it starts to taste good are the seasoning and the spices you use. Vegetables are the same way. It's not only the sauces that you use and the seasonings that you use, but it's the way that you cook them. If you boil them, they're going to be bland. If you coat them in something and you roast them, they're going to have more flavor. So this basic recipe that we're going to use, that we're coating them with, we've done it in a million different ways. We've done like Moroccan seasoning, we've done Italian seasoning, we've changed it up, but sort of still made even the same vegetables into a different dish. And eventually they'll all get up on Cook for Love. You can nag me a bit. It doesn't bother me. I actually need it to get motivated. So in here already we have the peppers. Now we're adding the butternut squash. Oops. We're adding, oh, I just remembered we're supposed to make the mix in here first, but that's okay. We'll do it in another bowl. And then the red pepper. So in theory, in this bowl was this mix, but we'll do this now. And the mix is mayonnaise, because it's going to coat the vegetable a little bit nicer and hold on to the flavors. So we have 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise. And we have 2 tablespoons of olive oil, which is here. Now, if you are looking to add more calories, add more mayonnaise, add more olive oil. If you're looking to do less, you could probably cut this a little bit. You're not going to be able to cut it a ton. So it's going to be 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I have to be honest, olive oil I don't tend to weigh or measure because it's free and I can kind of eyeball it. So we've mixed the olive oil and the mayonnaise, and next we're going to put in the spices. So you can use your basic taco seasoning, such as Old El Paso, or you can use the stuff that you can find at Trader Joe's. I find Trader Joe's taco seasoning mix is a little too spicy, but they do have some nice like chili and lime flavors and different things like that. So the taco seasoning goes in there. We're going to add garlic, because that makes everything better at all times. And then here we have a serrano pepper, which I was supposed to prep, and I didn't. So the serrano pepper, you're going to cut the head off of it. You're going to cut it this way through, and you're going to take the seeds out. And the seeds are a lot more heat, so it depends on how spicy you like it. I tend to remove the seeds so I can control exactly how much heat I want. And then I'm going to slice that up. And that goes in. And if you are a spice lover, and only if you are a spice lover, one of the most delicious things in the world is chipotle and adobo sauce. It adds not only heat, but it adds a smoky flavor. It's one of our family's favorite things in the world, but it is super, super spicy. So I'm going to tell you, go, if you like spice, go with just a little bit the first time, and then you can always add more. You can take the spice away. So this is what it looks like. The adobo sauce in particular is really, really tasty. And in this, I only add, I have to check my recipe. I only add, I think it's either half a teaspoon or a teaspoon. It's a teaspoon, so it's not a lot. So I'm going to do a little bit of just the sauce in there. And then I'm going to do some of the pepper. So the pepper comes like this. And I'm only going to use a tiny, tiny bit of it. So what am I going to do with the rest of it? The rest of the can, what I do is I take a piece of parchment paper and I lay them all out, and I add like a tablespoon of adobo on top of each pepper, and I freeze it in the freezer. And then once it's frozen, I put it in a Ziploc bag, and then it's just waiting for me whenever I need it. And a can of this will last me a significant period of time. So that's all I'm adding to here. And then it needs, everything always needs a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. And a little bit of lime juice. Anything you can sub for mayo. Is it because you can't find it, or because you don't like it, or because it has egg in it? Is there a reason in particular? Whoever's asking that question. I don't know, maybe you could try So Delicious coconut yogurt, but I have a feeling it's going to be a funky taste. I think worst case scenario, if you don't have mayonnaise and don't want to go to the store right now to get it, you can always just do olive oil. The thing that I like about this, if you see it, it's just thicker than it would be if it was just olive oil. So it coats a little bit nicer and kind of clings to the vegetables a little bit more than pure olive oil would. But if you don't have it, you don't want to use it, you can try just an extra tablespoon of olive oil. So now the vegetables are all in here. I'm adding the coating on top. Okay. And if there are leftovers of this, it's delicious on a taco salad. It's, you know, we don't just do tacos. We do burritos. We do enchiladas. We do quesadillas. And these fillings are delicious in all of those things, just to change it up. And if there are leftovers, you can even assemble the quesadilla frozen. So you have the 2 tortillas, you've got the filling and the cheese, and you can put it in the fridge. And then if your kid's a little bit older, or you know, you yourself have a metabolic disorder and you come home from work, it's all assembled for you, and then all you have to do is put it on the pan and fry it up, and you can have a quick meal. So you really want to get in there and coat these vegetables. And one of the keys to roasting is it has to be in a single layer. If it doesn't fit in a single layer, then I'm sorry, you have to use 2 roasting pans or 2 baking sheets. Because if it's not in a single layer, what happens is the heat creates a steam, and then they get steamed. So they'll get cooked, but you won't get that beautiful caramelization that really, really kicks them up a notch. Okay. So those are all have a nice little coating on it. And then it's going to go on my pan here. Pan, I'm going to drizzle just a tiny bit of olive oil in there. And honestly, it probably doesn't need it because there's enough fat in this, but on it goes. And I want to scrape as much of this filling off and get it on those vegetables. And then I'm going to spread it out. And this is going in a high oven. Roasting is always a high oven. So my oven is preset and preheated for 425 degrees. Just make sure these are a single layer. And it's going to go in there for about 15 minutes. And I'm going to set my Alexa, because otherwise I'm going to forget while I'm talking about something else. So I apologize for you having to listen to my alarm. Alexa, set timer for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Starting now. That's the only thing I use Alexa for. Okay. So while that's in, I'm going to do a tiny bit of tidying so I can move on to the next thing. So if there's any questions, now's a good time to ask them, or any comments or anything in particular. Even if it's not related directly to this, we can go. Okay. All right. This and get rid of this. So that's roasting. Our tortillas, it's been 15 minutes. They're ready to go. So let me move this out of the way for a second. And by the way, this is a very, very true depiction of how I cook. I literally, every single corner of my kitchen will be covered in something, and I don't clean up until I run out of space. Okay. Sorry. You'll know when your vegetables are ready. Okay, so this is our tortilla mix. If you've made it along with me, which I know is kind of hard because I'm moving fast, it's a really soft dough. It's not super sticky. You can see me just kind of maneuvering it. I'm getting very little on my hands. And what you would do is you would take, hang on, where's my tortilla mix? There it is. So you would then take this, and it's going to be, each tortilla was 25, 35, 40. So you're going to measure out 40-gram balls if this is the size you want. Again, this is a super low recipe, so if you want them bigger, make them bigger. What I tend to do is a little bit of a cheat, is I go a little bit higher than the 40 for my dough, because I'm not really good at rolling things out into perfect circles. So what I like to do is roll it out, and then I take a pizza cutter and I cut it so that it's a circle. Not very chef of me, but hey, what are you gonna do? So the wheat starch comes out like this. You sprinkle that on, put that there. I have my rolling pin, and I'm gonna roll it out. Once I start rolling, I flip it over so it is not going to stick. And I keep moving it. You see I roll it a little bit, and then I flip it and I turn it. And if I run out of wheat starch on my work surface, I give it more. So as you can see, this is not a very good circle. But I'm going to make it into a good one. Sometimes I'll even take the high protein tortilla and I'll put it on top and cut around it. Pizza cutter. And then I go around and I get a better circle. So I'm just going to roll out 2 of them for now, just to demonstrate how you make it. And then I'll do the rest after we're off camera. So you guys are not with me until 6 o'clock tonight. All right. Unless you want to, that's fine. Okay. Again, rolling, turning it over. So there's wheat starch on all ends. Rolling again, flipping it, brushing it into wheat starch, flipping over again. The more you move it around, the less likely it is to stick. So these make about a 6-inch circle. Again, you want it to be bigger, it can be bigger. These are super soft, these tortillas, and like I said, they defrost well. They're still soft, and Sarah Foster gave me probably the best tip ever. What she does is she takes the tortillas and she puts them in an envelope, not in an envelope, in a folder. I think it's in a Ziploc bag, and then puts them in a folder, and she brings them to work with her, and that way that they're stable and it's easy. If she's going to get a salad, she can then make it a wrap, and it just adds a little bit more to your meal. So again, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go around in a circle. And I know my daughter, who's in college now, she does the same thing now. She tends to have them with her. So she goes to the salad bar, she can have a little something more. Okay, so that's 2 of these done. Now I have to pull up the cooking induction cooktop, because I think if I turn my back to you, it's going to be, you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing. So let me move this. And this comes up. I'll be right back. So this is an induction cooktop that I got probably a few years ago. They are super, super handy to have when you're traveling, especially if you're traveling by car, not if you're going on a plane. But if you're traveling by car and you're staying at a hotel, we bring one of these with us, and that way we have the flexibility to make whatever we want if room service isn't great, or if we've had a meal that's a little too high in protein and we need to cut back. So it gives us just more flexibility. This is a huge cast iron pan. I'm turning this pan on. It's going to take a few minutes. What I like to do with the tortillas is, once the pan's super hot, there's no oil or anything. It's dry fried. It's cooked dry. So you do it on both sides. It's going to start to bubble a little bit, and then throw it on an open flame, and it will really proof nicely. And then after that, you can just wrap them in a clean kitchen towel, and they can be waiting for you while your vegetables are roasting. It's going to be a few minutes. I'm sorry. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. I'm drinking. It's 2:30. I promised. All right. Nope, not hot enough. Okay. This. Still not hot enough. It has to be really, really hot for it to work. So I do the same thing, by the way, with the Cook for Love bread doughs and the pizza doughs. I'll roll them out. I'll use those if I have them in the fridge and use those as tortillas, but I'll also use them for flatbreads and different kinds of wraps. I'm trying to think of what else we've done with it. But it's a quick way in the morning, especially, to just have kind of a fresh piece of bread. I don't know. My daughter in particular, once it gets frozen, she doesn't like it as much. So this is a way to just kind of pull a piece out and roll it out and put it on a pan, and it's nice and fresh. Nope, sorry, not hot enough yet. Take a couple of seconds. The question was, will an electric griddle work in place of the cooktop? It will if it can get hot enough. For this particular recipe, it will definitely work, if you're traveling for anything else. But as long as it can get to It's probably, I have no idea what the heat is. I would be making it up if I said 450. But if it gets hot, yes, you can try it and see if it works. But if I'm at home, normally I'm just doing it right on the stove. I know I am home, but if I'm doing it on the stove here, you can't see me. I'm trying not to turn my back to you. And how am I telling if it's hot? I'm putting my hand probably about a half an inch away from the bottom of this. And it is getting hot. You can actually, I don't know if you can see it, but it's smoking a tiny bit. So, hang on. Yeah, there you go. So, I'm going to put it on here, like that. I'm going to give it a few minutes. I'm going to get gloves so I can pick it up and show you what I'm doing. So, my mother-in-law got me these. They're very, very handy. So we're starting to get tiny, tiny bubbles on there, and that's what we're looking for. And then you can see it's sturdy enough that I can pick it up with a spatula. It's not with the spatula. It's not falling apart. Again, we're going to cook it on this side, and then over here I'm going to turn on a flame. It's nice and high. And by the way, you can brush these with butter and put cinnamon sugar on them. It's a nice treat. And we've done them where we've done diced apples with cinnamon and sugar and butter and rolled them up for more of a dessert, especially when levels are high and we're looking for high calories and low fat. All right. Okay, so if you see here, there's some bubbles forming, which is exactly what we're looking for. But now, and I'm hoping you can see this, I'm going to throw it on the open flame, and that's really going to move. There was a question about can you cook these and freeze them and then defrost them? Yes, you can. You can, what I would do is put a piece of parchment paper in between each one, and then put it in a Ziploc bag and freeze it. And you can just pull it out. It might need a quick heat on an open flame like this to make it a little bit softer and pliable. So I don't know if you can see the bubbles here. That's how we know it's done. And you can see look, I can bend it. It's not breaking, and it tastes delicious. So we're going to do the next one. And then I'm going to let you guys make your own tortillas. I'm not going to do the whole batch. I tend to, when I defrost them, I take them out, and I do tend to throw them in the flame. I know Molly, when she's in school, doesn't tend to. She just takes it out and lets it defrost on its own, and it's still soft, which is what we're looking for. And again, you can flip it over. Flame back on. If you don't have a gas stove top, it's still going to, I'm sorry, there was just a question asked, what if you don't have a gas stove top? They'll still cook fine. The gas just tends to make it poof more. They'll be totally fine. You just have to cook them for an extra minute or so on each side, but it will still work. And again, tortillas are something that there are options out there to make life a little bit easier that you can purchase. I know there's even a few gluten-free ones that are not terribly high in fat, but it depends on what your allowance is. I like this because it's 1 milligram. It gets a decent chunk of calories into my daughter, and because 95% of the time I have the mix done in my freezer, it's super easy to make. So again, and this is, if you had just a gas griddle, you would still be seeing these bubbles like this, and that's exactly what you're looking for. Okay, proofing a little bit. Now I'm going to go on the open flame. You can hopefully see it proofing more. I have to figure out a way to use 2 cameras so you can get a close-up of things I want you to get a close-up of, but that's down the road. Let's see. Okay. And I'm just flipping it back and forth. And again, what we're looking for are those bubbles. So we have them there. And then what I would do is just take a clean tea towel, which I can't find at the moment, and I would fold them over and let them just sit. So that's this done. That's tortillas finished. So recipe 1 is done. Let me get rid of this pan. Okay. And that off. Okay. Okay. Next up, what we're going to do is, and this is optional, but I happen to really, really like greens in my Mexican food. So what I'm using is Swiss chard. And I do Swiss chard because, 2 cups of Swiss chard is 52 milligrams and 2 cups of spinach is 80. So you save a little bit of fee, and I think it tastes just as good, if not better. So, cutting board's here. The Swiss chard we're going to take. And what we want to do is get rid of this stem here. You can use it and you can cook it, but you just have to cook it longer. I tend to just discard it. So I fold the leaf in half and I run my knife down through the stem. Down through the stem. I'm removing the stems. And then I turn it on its side and I cut it into strips. I don't know if you guys can see. I think I've made a mess, so you can't see what I'm doing. Okay. So then you just cut it this way. So we're going to take a look. Those vegetables are starting to smell delicious. I don't know how much time I have left on timer, but I'm going to check in a second. I find your nose is a good way to just get a sense of when something's done. If you start to smell it, it's a good idea to start checking in on it. So, done. That's my timer. Alexa, timer off. Alexa, timer off. Now, these vegetables aren't going to be done yet, but they're getting there. So they've started to brown a little bit, but what I want to do now is just toss them so the other side can get cooked. And they're going to cook for 15 to 20 minutes. It depends on your oven, how hot it is and how even it heats. We're just going to go and flip them over. So I can tell by looking at these, by how brown they are, that they're going to definitely need 20 more minutes. And not just 15. Because they didn't brown as much as I would have expected. And again, once I've tossed them, I want to spread them out so it's a single layer. And then they go back in the oven. Alexa, set timer for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Starting there. So those are going to finish. And then the chard is just about ready. So the pan back on, and all I'm going to do is saute the chard. So I've had it sitting and soaking in water, so it's nice and clean. And then I've cut it into strips. And whenever you're doing greens, they need a little bit of garlic, which I have somewhere on a pan, and they need a little bit of olive oil and salt. So, where is it? There it is. And that's my garlic. That's just a clove of garlic that I have thinly sliced. And if I'm doing greens for Italian food, I'll add a little bit of crushed red pepper too. But for this, I'm going to let the other seasonings heat it up. Yeah. A little bit of olive oil. It's not really hot yet. And if it was hot enough, I would have heard a little bit of a sizzle, but I'm not really hearing that. So, oh, there it goes. So garlic just goes on until it starts to release its smell. It's usually only like 30 seconds a minute. You don't want it to burn. And then in go your greens. And you just want them wilted. I'm going to add a pinch of salt. So they're starting to wilt a little bit, and I want them a little bit more. That's done, and that's nice and cooked. And then I'm going to set that aside. And once those vegetables come out of the oven, we're just going to combine them all and mix it together, and add a little bit of cilantro and a little bit of lime juice to finish off the seasoning. So that is done. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. All right then. Let me just tidy up a little bit at the end of this. Would Miracle Whip work in place of Hellmann's? Would it work? Yes. I don't like Miracle Whip. I don't like the tangies it. But if you like it, yeah, it will work. There's not that much of a fee difference. Mayonnaise is actually not that regular Hellmann's mayonnaise is not that high. But if for some reason that's what you have, it will of course work, or that's what you prefer. Okay. So next up, I think we're going to do the jackfruit. Since this quarantine, we have been using more jackfruit because, especially in the beginning, it was super hard to find fresh vegetables. And I was fortunate enough to have a good few cans in my freezer. We have been using it in place of the mushroom and eggplant combination in veggie balls and in veggie burgers, and doing jackfruit ones. Molly seems to like them more. She really likes the texture of it. I think jackfruit, if you're not familiar with it, can be a little bit tricky to prepare because it comes in a brine. And the brine has a pretty distinct, and by distinct I mean not nice, and overwhelming flavor. So what you need to do is make sure you get as much of the brine off, and then you give it other flavors to get absorbed. So I am going to, at some point in the next week, I'm going to do just a video that I'll put on the website that just is how to prep jackfruit, because I think that is a source of confusion for people. And I think different people do different things, and different people use different parts of the jackfruit, and that's all okay. But what I do for jackfruit, again, this is a can of just regular young jackfruit and brine. The jackfruit and syrup is a sweet thing used for desserts. Do not use that. It's not going to work. Can you use prepared jackfruit, such as Upton's or the Jackfruit Company? Absolutely. We're not big fans of their seasoning. We think they're a little too overwhelming, but that's just our opinion in our house. If you like them, by all means, use them. Molly uses jackfruit a lot in college. So what she does is she gets the Jackfruit Company's lightly seasoned jackfruit, because it's all prepped for her. And then she will take a sauce like Frontera's skillet sauce. They have a bunch of really, really nice flavors. And I know that they are just starting to work with us to try to get the exact protein content. And then we'll get that up on how much feed. But she'll just take the prepared lightly seasoned jackfruit and some of the sauce, and put it in a a mini crock pot, and we'll let it go all day. And then when she comes home, sometimes she'll add a dab of butter to it, and sometimes she puts it in her air fryer, because then all of a sudden you start to get a little bit of different texture to it. If you just air fry it for a few minutes or broil it for a few minutes, you get much more interesting, kind of a little bit of a crunch here and there, and it just is a really nice mouthfeel. But for this, we're going to do a homemade version, but there are shortcuts to almost everything. So, key to jackfruit: rinse, rinse, and then rinse again. So in this bowl, I'm filling it up with water. And I'm totally proud of this area, so you can't really see what I'm doing anymore, but I'm stuck now since I'm live. Okay. So we've got water in there, then we're putting the drained jackfruit in, and we're really gonna squish it around. And really agitate it, and try to get some of that brine out. Now, if I took this water and I dumped it through my colander, I'm then taking that brine that I tried really hard to get out of, and I'm pouring it back on. So what you need to do is remove the jackfruit from the water this way. Okay? Otherwise, you're just undoing all of your work. Then you're going to dump the water, and you're going to fill it up again with fresh water. Someone just asked, have I ever used the frozen jackfruit from Trader Joe's? Didn't even know Trader Joe's had a frozen jackfruit. Out of curiosity, is it seasoned? Is it just prepped and ready? I don't know. I'll definitely keep my eye out for it, though, because that would be handy. So again, I put it in fresh water. I'm agitating it, and I'm pulling it out. I'm dumping the water, and I'm doing it again. I'm sorry. You have to do this 3 to 4 times to really get rid of that brine. We're going to do 3 to save a couple of minutes. Okay. So, agitate it, really squish it around, comes out. Now, a can of jackfruit weighs, just drained, is 280 grams. By the time I'm done with it, I'm very, very sad to say I only get between 170 and 190 grams of usable jackfruit. So I've drained that for the last time. I'm shaking it a little bit. And now what I want to do is, if you look here and you really look at the jackfruit, there is a core that's right there, almost like a pineapple core. That core is tougher than the ends. Can you eat the core? Yes. But the core doesn't shred the way the rest of the jackfruit does, and it takes longer to cook. So if you're going in a slow cooker, you can probably use it, but really dice that up fine. I tend to just discard it. So I'm going here. Sorry, I've made so much of a mess you can barely see me. Okay, let's see. It's hot. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to go with my knife, and I'm just going to cut out that core, and that's going to go in my discard pile. And I'm going to do that with each piece. Again, there's nothing wrong with the core. It's not inedible. It's not going to make you sick. It just cooks at it just takes longer to cook, and the texture of it isn't as nice. Cutting them all out. And now the next thing I want to do after I cut them out is I want to squeeze as much water as possible out of the jackfruit, so that it's able to brown on a pan and it's able to absorb the flavors that I want it to absorb. So if it's waterlogged, it's not going to absorb those other flavors. Now, when we do this, we still have to go by the gram weight of the original amount. So it's 280 grams in terms of calculating fee. But in the end, we're only getting about 190, but the fee amount is the same because we've reduced the water content. Okay, so that's all done. Now, in a clean tea towel, I'm going to add the jackfruit that I'm using. And in this jackfruit, when I squeeze it, I'm also going to see some seeds The seeds are a little bit higher in protein and they don't taste nice. So I'm going to get rid of those as well. So this is my jackfruit there. This is the rest of my tea towel. I'm going to twist until it's nice and snug, and then I'm going to put it over the sink, and I am really going to squeeze. And that's getting all that brine out and all that water out. So let's get rid of that. And now when I open it up, because I squeezed it so much, it's actually kind of pre-shredded for me. I don't know if you can see this. You see how it's already kind of shredded up. So now I'm going to put it on my cutting board, and I'm going to dig around for a few minutes for the seeds and get rid of those. So let's see. That's a seed pod right there. And it's, you know, if you miss one or two, you miss one or two. They're when you're cooking them, you can kind of see them and pull them out. I don't think it would probably make a huge difference if there was a little bit left in there. Okay. Okay, I'm really starting to smell those vegetables. And I hear them sizzling, which means my oven is probably finally hot enough. Okay. And then even though this is kind of shredded itself a good bit, I'm going to run a knife through it a little bit. See? I'm just taking my knife and just kind of doing that. Okay. Okay, now push that to the side. And next, I'm going to take my onion. I have really blocked your view completely. Okay. Taking this. All right. Again, just like we did with the red onion, we're going to cut off the end here. So we're going to keep the rooted end in place. We're going to cut through the root, and then we're going to peel. This is not a very good onion, so I'm going to peel another layer. And I want this onion to be minced. I want it nice and small. And I'm also going to be doing the minced onion with a few different dishes. So I'm going to mince the entire onion, even though I'm only using a tablespoon in this particular recipe. This was definitely not a great onion. Peel another layer off. And another layer off. Again, it's hard to get good produce right now. Okay, so peeling an onion. I have it peeled and now I want to dice it. I'm going to put it down like this. So again, nice flat surface, so nice and stable. I'm going to put my hand on top of it, and you'll see my fingers are, my palm is on it, but my fingers are up and away, so I cannot cut myself. My palm is on it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice through it this way in small slices. So that way it's going to be minced for me. So a slice, another slice above it, probably about 1/4 of an inch, another slice, and another slice. So now it's sliced through like this in different layers. Now I'm going to go this way. I'm going to slice it lengthwise. And again, see how that root is just holding everything together for me so it's not flying all over the place? I'm going to get nice, even onion slices. So now I'm going to mince it. So now I'm going this way. Okay, I'm going to have to check on those vegetables because I can smell them. Let's see. They're starting to get nice and caramelized. I'm going to actually give them another little bit of a toss, but I am going to put them back into those last few minutes. Typically, Actually, I only need to toss one. I'll show you guys. If you look here, do you see how browned that is? That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that kind of caramelization. That's where the flavor comes in. It's not burnt, it's caramelization. Sometimes I tell myself that when it is burnt, but in this case, it genuinely is. Okay. And it goes back in the oven. Okay. And I'm hoping there's just 5 more minutes left on the timer. All right, so we have the onion. We have the jackfruit. Turn that on. Done. Those are done. So this is the Jackfruit Company is one of their prepared ones that you can find in the refrigerator section of a lot of just regular supermarkets. And again, this one's Tex-Mex. We love spice in our family, but we don't like these flavors. It just our own personal choice. And this is a type of sauce that my daughter uses. This is Frontera, and this one happens to be chicken taco skillet, but they have probably about 6 different varieties. They've got a nice enchilada sauce. They have a whole bunch of different things. So they're worth looking out for, and we will work on getting the exact protein content for you. Excuse me. Okay. So we've got our skillet going, and you can do canola oil, you can do olive oil. I tend to use olive oil for almost everything, except for Asian cooking, because I think it adds a flavor that just doesn't go. So, tablespoon of olive oil, the jackfruit, higher, and I only want about 1/4 of an onion. Normally I would have this weighed, but I'm just not as organized as I hope to be. And there we go. I'm going to let this go until it starts to brown. You want it nice and seasoned. Brown a little bit. The onion's going to get translucent. The jackfruit's going to brown. If it starts looking dried out, add a little bit more of the olive oil to it. But you can see how it really shreds up nicely and kind of on its own with minimal work. I just found the seed pod that I missed. Throw that out. Okay. And in here, we're going to add some serrano pepper. Alexa, timer off. Sarah, can you remind me in like 3 minutes to take those vegetables out, or I'm going to forget about it? Thank you. Okay, a little bit of serrano pepper. How much you add really just depends on how much you like heat. It needs a little bit, but if you don't like heat, just add a tiny bit. And you can see there's also some brown bits on this pan. That is also, it's not burning. That again is the caramelization. And that's where there's a lot of flavor. So we're going to add something in there to kind of pick all that up. And a little bit. So I can see that that's starting to dry out a little too much, and I'm going to add a little bit more of the oil to it. I like to add in here, could you just do taco seasoning mix and water? You could, but it's not going to be as thick of a sauce. So what I like to do is add, I love fire roasted tomatoes. So I'll add some of those in there, and I will add, or I'll add a can of, not even a can, half of a can of the small cans of like V8 spicy. If you don't have any of that, you could even add the water with a little bit of tomato paste to it. You just want something with a little bit more body to really cling to the sauce. Okay. Sit up here. And a tiny bit more oil. Burn it up. Okay, I'm just going to another seed pod. Put that, put the rest back in. Okay, so it's starting to brown a little bit. And that's just what we're looking for. It's a little bit of browning. Okay, and then we're going, thank you. Sarah's reminding me to take the veggies out in my ear. All right, veggies are out. So this is the tray of vegetables. So you can see that piece of onion might have gotten a little burnt. That might not be a beautiful caramelization, but the rest of it is really, really nice. What I like to do is while it's hot, I squeeze some lime on it. You can hear that sizzle. And then a little bit of fresh cilantro, which is here. And then that's just going to get added right to that short that we cooked earlier. So these are going in here. So there you go in that pan. We're just going to toss it around so that the greens get mixed around in it. And it is just absolutely beautiful and tastes delicious. So at this point, what you want to do is taste it yourself. Have a little taste. Say, do I want a little more salt? Do I want a little more lime juice? Do I want a little more heat? If you want a little bit more of that, you can add a little bit of seasoning to it. You can add a little bit more of the chipotle if you want more heat. Remember, you can't take away heat, so it's always good to under-season at first. Okay. So that's the vegetable taco filling completely done. Now we're still working on the jackfruit. So the jackfruit's here. Now I'm going to add the diced fire-roasted tomatoes. Yep. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Say that one more time because it's sizzling. Sarah's talking in my ear. Okay. And churros one. Okay. All right. So that's going to cook for a few minutes, and we're going to add the seasoning. Taco seasoning, which is 2 tablespoons. Actually, 1 tablespoon is good. I'm going to change that in the recipe. And again, in our family, because we like heat, we're going to add some chipotle. If you don't like it, don't add We put the chipotle in almost everything, including our guacamole. So I'm going to add a teaspoon of just the sauce in there without any of the pepper. And then I'm going to add some of the pepper. And it goes. And here is the secret that any chef will might or might not reveal to you. At the end of a dish, add a pat of butter, no matter what the dish. So think about the fat that's normally in a meat product. There's no fat in this except for the little bit of oil that we used. Now I'm looking here. Sorry, I'm going a little sidetracked. I'm looking here, and there's all this stuff on the bottom that I want in my taco. I want that flavor. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of water like that, and I'm going to scrape that up so that that flavor, all that caramelized flavor, goes back into my sauce. And I'm going to let it go. Okay. So I'm going to put that heat down. Now I'm going to put it down to a simmer. And I'm going to let that go for probably about 20 minutes. The longer it cooks, the more flavorful it gets. So let it go for at least 20 minutes. And now I'm going to add that pat of butter. And I'm going to add that squeeze of lime. And I'm going to add some of that nice fresh cilantro. Okay. And that's just going to go for another 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to move this now to the back because I hear Sarah's telling me that since we're cutting it close with time at this point, that you guys might want to see churros before you see salsa and guacamole, since those are pretty basic and there's nothing special about those in terms of modifications that you would normally do. High protein and low protein are the same recipe. Okay, so I'm going to put this on my stove behind me so I can clear this area a little bit. I'm going to take questions now because I am going to need a few minutes to clear this completely so that you guys can see what I'm doing for the next recipe. So if you have any questions, now's the time. You can use, the question was, am I using a metal or a stone pan for roasting the vegetables? You can use either. Mine is a regular metal baking sheet. They just are so black because I use them so much. Let me just clear this area. So I'm going to be out of the screen for a few minutes while I try to find a space to move my mess to. And then we can always wrap up and do guacamole and salsa to whoever is lingering at the end. I have nothing going on, so I am okay to run over, but I know you guys might have other things happening. Okay. Yes. Okay. So, a few things that are going to be annoying for this recipe, and a few things that I was supposed to have prepped before we started, and I didn't get around. I'm going to have to whip aquafaba. Now, aquafaba is the liquid that's in a can of chickpeas. You strain it, and then you whip it, and it is kind of, it lightens stuff, and it makes it a little bit like an egg white. I know there recently was a really nice recipe posted by, was it Sasha? That did meringues with it. And you can use it for different things. And we're going to be using it in this recipe. The issue is that it takes probably about 10 minutes to really whip up, or at least it did last time I made it. And it's going to be a little bit noisy, and I'm sorry for that. I can take questions while that's being done. So if you have any, by all means, just move this. So this remains hot. Switch. Okay, just clean. Now, next we're going to be making churros. This recipe uses what's called a chew pastry. And that pastry makes cream puffs, it makes egg clairs, it makes profiteroles, and it makes churros. So if you're making this, I recommend saving some of the dough for something else. The cream puffs don't puff quite the same because you have to remember an egg serves multi-purposes in a recipe. It not only provides moisture and it helps to bind, but it also has a rising property to it, and it adds some flavor and some fat. So the aquafaba whipped egg whites helps to add that lightness, and helps to add that binding, but it doesn't serve the other purposes of the egg. So you do add some baking powder to it, which is not normally in a traditional French pastry dough. But that's the reason why we add it, and they don't proof up quite as much. So when you're making it, kind of know, if you're doing the cream puffs, you kind of know the mound that you're putting in it's only going to get a little bit bigger than that, but they taste absolutely amazing. And what we're going to do today is we're going to test to see whether or not, my hope is that we can use, that the dough can be, the churros could be frozen and then fried as needed, or fried and then frozen and reheated. So I'm going to test all of those for you guys today when this is all done, and I'll have those results posted on the site. All right, let me get my recipe and put them all together. Here we go. I just got rid of the heating thing, but we actually still need the conduction heater. Okay. So here's what we're going to do for that. I have to bring the conduction heater back because I still need it. I've only made this recipe probably like 3 or 4 times at this point. So I'm not as familiar with it. So bear with me as I try to follow my own directions. And I'm terrible at following directions in recipes, which is why I create my own. But then I can't follow my own. So what are you going to do? All right. In a pot rather, we're going to melt butter. And we're going to get rice milk, which I don't have out. Sarah said we had a question. What's the question, Sarah? No, the question was, is there a specific brand of chickpea to use for the aquafaba? No, absolutely not. Whatever you have is fine. So I did melt the butter beforehand. So that's a stick of butter, right? Nope, I don't have my glasses on top of my head. So, and 300 grams of rice milk. Oh, hang on one second. It's not sticks. Okay. So in theory, I should have had this all measured out. So what I do sometimes to save myself a pan or a pot is I zero out the rice milk on here, and then I pour it in here. So I'm on 300 grams of rice milk. That's 173. 267. Now I have to start going slower. 294. And 300. Okay. So, in a bowl, that's going to sit there and get that together. Let it melt. And then we need to bring it to a rolling boil. So in here I have Cook for Love's baking mix. And I have the wheat starch, not the wheat starch, the tapioca starch. Tapioca adds a crisper. It helps with crisping and it helps with browning. So for certain recipes in particular, tapioca really adds a little bit, adds a unique baking quality that just gives it a little bit more body. So the tapioca is going in with Cook for Love baking mix. Okay. And we are going to add an extra, even though there's xanthan gum in the baking mix, we need a little bit more for this recipe. So we're going to add half a teaspoon. Okay. Go ahead. The question was, can you use coconut milk instead of rice milk? I haven't tried it. Coconut milk has a higher fat content, so it doesn't always work. I think it probably would. Almond milk would certainly work because it's around the same consistency. I think flax milk would probably work too. I would say most likely, but I can't promise it because I haven't tested it. Okay. That measuring teaspoon has chipotle all over it, which probably won't be a nice flavor. Let me get another one. That's 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and this is 1/2 tablespoon, so that's the same amount. And we have salt, pinch of salt, and Jello pudding. Jello pudding is used again because it helps with binding, and it adds a little bit of sweetness. So. Do with my scale. This is a problem when I'm all over the place. Okay. If you don't have Jello pudding, is there something else you could use? It's pretty unique. Certainly, if you're one of our international people, bird's custard would work in its place. And I'm adding just 2 tablespoons, I believe. Right? Yeah. That would work. You could probably add a little bit extra xanthan gum and a little bit more sugar, and it might be close. But if you can get the Jello pudding, get it. So this is all the dry mix, and I'm just going to mix it together. Right. And this has come to an absolute rolling boil. So now I'm going to remove it from the heat. And get rid of this. Okay. So it's out of the way. I need a little rolling cart next to me where I can just shove stuff. And my whisk is here. Okay. And now I'm going to dump all of this starch mix into the melted butter that had come to a boil with the rice milk. Okay. Mix that up. Okay, the question asked was, is tapioca starch and tapioca flour the same thing? It's one of the only times I'm going to say yes. They are. Typically, like potato flour, potato starch are 2 different things. Corn flour, corn starch, 2 different things. Wheat flour, wheat starch, 2 different things. Tapioca flour and tapioca starch are the same. It's just a way to torture you and make you wonder what you're doing. So I dumped it in, and you can see and there are pictures on the website as well, step by step. It's fairly smooth, the dough, and it's all together. And now it needs to cool for about 10 minutes. And coincidentally, that's about how long it's going to take us to get our aquafaba done. So let that sit and cool. All right, aquafaba. So I drain the aquafaba and I put it in the fridge because it's supposed to be easier to whip then. So I'm hoping that helps with this process. But now I have to find where I put it in the fridge. Sorry, everybody. There's no hope for me. I didn't put it in the fridge. I put it in the freezer because I was supposed to get to it before this started. So it's a little bit frozen, which it's not supposed to be. Ay, ay, ay. Did I tell you I'm more like the Swedish chef than Martha Stewart? All right. Okay, hang on 1 second. This is not coming on. There we go. Aquafaba. We have 1/2 cup of aquafaba, which is 120 grams. Zero that out. Okay, 120 grams of frozen aquafaba. Not supposed to be frozen. It will defrost once I start whipping it, I hope. Hoping it doesn't change the consistency, but we'll find out together. Okay. So what you need is to whip it. So you're going to need to add the whipper, the wire attachment. You can do this certainly with an electric mixer. I wonder, and I haven't tried it, and I was supposed to before this, I wonder if it would even work with an emulsion blender. But that's something for me to test, or one of you guys to test if you don't have a freestanding mixer. Okay, so now I need to move the mixer over. Hang on, so you guys can see what I'm doing. So cream of tartar is also going to be added to this. Cream of tartar is just a stabilizer. It's actually the second ingredient in baking powder. Baking powder is cream of tartar and baking soda, just as a little tidbit for you. But cream of tartar helps to stabilize whipped egg whites, and it helps to stabilize these as well. So I'm going to apologize because this is going to be loud, and it's going to be annoying, and it's going to be uneventful because it takes a while to whip. So just double check my recipe, make sure we've done everything right so far. No, I forgot to add the vanilla. It's a good thing I checked. I'm going to add the vanilla right now to my pastry dough that's right here. It should have been added in with the milk and butter so that it was evenly distributed, which makes sense, but I wasn't paying attention. Okay, that's good. This moves out. Okay. And the other thing I forgot to do, I'm looking here and it says to put the chew dough back on the pan and just cook it for a minute or so the dough really comes together and it's nice and smooth. This is the problem with me trying to do 25 things at once. Sorry, everybody. So that chew dough should have, after I combined it, it should have gone back on the heat, and I should have just mixed it for a minute on heat. So I'm doing that right now behind me, just to make it a little bit smoother. And right now it's actually helping me since I forgot the vanilla, which is the story of my life when I'm cooking. There's nothing worse than when you're making the bread and you're just about done, and all of a sudden you look over and you see the starter sitting there, and you're like, seriously? Happens to me all the time. Okay, so, we got a question. Go ahead. Just a regular cylinder. I did it. I actually even did it through this one, which is rather a large hold, because the garbanzo beans are so big, they stay there. What's that? Is there another question, Sarah? Oh, sorry, I forgot to say what the question was. The question was, what do I strain the chickpeas with? So any kind of strainer. I don't use cheesecloth or anything like that because the garbanzo beans are quite large. So unless you have a really, really big cylinder, anything will work. Okay. So, this is cooking now for a minute on the stove. And it is smoother looking than it was before. And it's a little bit shiny, which is what we're looking for. This is just going to keep whipping. I don't know, can you hear me or does it sound terrible now, Sarah? Okay. So I'm going to put it up pretty high. So again, it's going to get noisier. Sorry. All right. While this is whipping, let's make salsa. So, this is why my kitchen looks like this, because this is what I do. I've got a spare second, so let me do something else. So, what we're going to do is take 3 tomatoes and dice them. We're going to do a small dice like this, and we're going to add some diced onion, because we already have it done, right in there. Some lime. Aquafaba is getting frothy. I'm going to share with you in a second. Lime. Some serrano peppers. Some cilantro. And some salt. And that, my friend, is salsa. Done. Mix it up. We'll see if we can squeeze guacamole in on the next step. There's your fresh salsa. Makes a big difference in the tacos. And if you don't feel like making it, use starter. Okay. Now, back to the aquafaba. You can see right now that it's, see how it's changed? It's white and it's frothy, but it's still by no means a peak. It's got to keep going. In a minute, we're going to add the cream of tartar. And if you have any questions, now's a good time. And just a quarter teaspoon of the cream of tartar. Starting to form a more cohesive look to it. It's not shiny and there's no peaks yet. I have the dent and gum. I'm hoping I did. Keep going. It's not done yet, but I want to show you what it's starting to look like. Which I think is just so cool. This would also, this aquafaba would be very, very good for waffles to make them a little bit lighter without adding the fee of whipped eggs. So you can see it's starting to really get there, but it's not there yet. And aquafaba, you can, you know, if you drain an entire can, you're not using quite all of it for this. So you can take it and freeze it in ice cube trays so you can use it for something else later. But you're going to need a decent amount to really get it whipped. One minute, sorry. In the meantime, this is a pastry bed. Very, very handy to have. If you don't have one, you can use a Ziploc bag where you cut off the corner of the bag. And this is a star tip. It's one of the large ones. It is number, I don't have my glasses on, I can't read it, but I'll tell you later. Sarah's talking to me, but I can't hear her, so I'm wondering if you guys can hear me. Hang on. Is that Sarah? The one, oh, Sarah said it's a 1M. So the tip goes in there. You then fold the bag down, and when the dough is ready, we're going to put it right in there for the pie. Ready? I just came in and was picking vegetables up this way. And by the way, everyone, this is why I never have an end milligram per gram amount, because someone keeps picking. She just said I can't be mad at her on camera. I'm like, yeah, I can. It's really starting to, you start to see the whipping marks from it. Not quite. Still not quite done. But if you look here, you can see how it's getting shiny and it's starting to stay. So this would be like a medium peak versus a firm peak. So it's going to go for another 2 or 3 minutes. Is that questions coming in, Sarah? So I'm sorry, I'm just getting a message from Sarah into my ear like a crazy person. She was saying, I'm sorry, who was it that did it? Okay, so Kristen, who was one of our testers for the churros, said that she actually cooked some and froze them, and they reheated beautifully in the air fryer. So this makes it a really, really handy dessert to have. And I did promise, it hasn't happened yet, but I think we need like a nice spicy chocolate pudding kind of thing to dip it in. It would be delicious. I'll work on that at some point. I'm rushing this a little bit because I feel like you guys are bored. For making it at home, let it go a little bit longer. This is a fairly stiff peak, but honestly, under ideal circumstances, I would go another 2 minutes. So you can see that it's still a little bit soft, but when I do this, it maintains a little bit of the swirl in there. Now, I'll be honest with you. Normally, when you whip egg whites, you try really, really carefully to kind of fold them into something to maintain that lightness. I tried to fold them into this dough, and it just didn't happen, to be honest with you. So I took half of it out, and I mix it while it's mixing. While I'm mixing it by hand, I'm going to put this back on and whip it a little bit more because I'm looking at it and I know the consistency is not quite right, and I'm rushing something, and then the end result's not going to be good, which is the pain about baking. So I have half the aquafaba in here. This is the mix, and I'm just going to fold it in as best I can. So you can see here, when I'm folding it in, the dough is not nice and smooth, and it's not evenly mixed. So I decided, whether right or wrong, I don't know, because I'm making a lot of this up when I make up recipes. I decided to switch attachments. So instead of using the whisk attachment, I'm going back to the paddle. And now what I'm going to do is combine the dough that I have here right back in here. And then I'm going to mix it so that it's nice and smooth. So same. And it's on. We'll let that go for a minute or two. Give it another minute. So if you look here, the dough's not smooth yet. So I'm going to mix it for another minute. But I just don't want you to panic if you're doing it and all of a sudden it went from a smooth dough to looking kind of funky. It'll all come together, hopefully. I'm sorry. Sarah, repeat that again. Okay, someone just asked for tips using the air fryer. I'm assuming not specific to this recipe. In general, okay. So the air fryer is my best friend. There are very few gadgets that earn permanent space on my counter. My KitchenAid mixer is one, and the air fryer is the other. I use it for everything. I even bought Molly a small one that she has in college, so she can take different Cook for Love recipes and just heat them up, and they supplement what she can get. So if she gets a Greek salad and she has falafels in her freezer, she will just spritz them with olive oil and put them in the air fryer for a few minutes and then go take a shower and come out. And then all of a sudden, your plain salad, it becomes more of a meal. And she uses it for pretty much everything in terms of reheating. I find it great for roasting a small amount of vegetables, but there's 4 of us in this house and we're really big vegetable lovers. So the basket, even though we have a large one, it'll be great when it's, if there's 1 or 2 of us, it would be great. But I don't find it's fantastic for that. It's great at cooking. It's not enough space. It doesn't work with wet batters. It does work with some of the dry ones, but I still prefer the KFC flash fried at least. So it's just fried in oil for a little bit, and then it reheats beautifully in the air fryer, so that it makes things a little bit quicker and easier. But I find it doesn't get quite that crunch. But I know other people on the site have said that they've used it and are happy with the results. So number one, I think I'm really a pain and I'm really particular. And so is my family. So, maybe you can, but I'm not the biggest fan. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to this. If you look now at this dough, it's nice and smooth. Now, me being the ninny that I am, I printed out 2 copies of the chew recipe and no copies of the churro, but I think that that's okay because I'm pretty sure I can handle it. So we put the star tip this is a large star tip, so you don't need that coupler that you need with a smaller tips. It's just cut at the bottom and the tip goes in. We folded it over, and now we're going to make a C shape with our hand, or we can put this in a mug or a bowl or something, but I find the hand is just as good as anything else. So I'm folding it down, and what I want to do is fill this piping bag. So it goes in, and then I scrape it on the side. It goes in, and I scrape it on the side. And again, remember this dough, cream puffs, profiteroles, which are just cream puffs stuffed with ice cream, and egg clairs, which I'm working on. Last time I just did it for the 2 recipes, but I do, it's the same dough, so I think an egg clair will actually end up being fairly easy to adapt. Something funny in there. So there are people who are super skilled, who can, or claim they can, pipe this right into hot oil. I can't. They get all funky and weird looking. They still taste delicious. But I like how, to me, it's important how something looks as well. So I pipe it on a piece of parchment paper first, so that it's nice and straight and it's the size I want it to be. I'm going to move this KitchenAid mixer, and I'm going to bring back the conduction heater. Okay, be right back. All right, next. So, moved over, plug this in. We just, if you have a deep fryer, which I have somewhere in my basement, but we don't use it regularly enough for me to always take it out, you can absolutely use a deep fryer. I used it all the time when Molly was younger, but I find it's not used as often. I think partially because we have the air fryer and partially because we're not frying as much stuff. So you want a neutral tasting oil, whether it's canola, vegetable, you can melt Crisco, for these churros. And you want it to be deep enough for the churro to fry, so it's honestly almost the whole bottle. But you can reuse this oil. So you can, if there's stuff in there, you can strain it out and put it in a container and use it again. It's only when you have heavily seasoned stuff you have to kind of discard the oil. Otherwise, you can use it a few times. Like I had oil in my pan before we started, literally 3 minutes before we started. But I had used it to make those spicy jackfruit nuggets, and I was like, no, that's going to be terrible. So I was racing to clean that out. All right. So I don't have my parchment paper right here. Sorry, I'm going to be off screen for a second while I get parchment paper. So now, and as we, if we decide that you guys like these classes and you want to do more of them, and we're going to base it all on your feedback, we'll try to figure out angles and things like that, and get a bit more professional, but not a lot because it's me. And you guys can also give us suggestions on what you'd like to see us make and all of those kinds of things. Okay, so what I've done now is I push the dough down, and now what I'm starting to do is twist the top of it so that the dough is going to come out. It's going to be nice and tight. There's no air bubbles in there. And I'm going to pipe with this about 6 inches. And that oil is heating up. And maybe I'll try to pipe one in there just to see, but I don't think it's going to work for me. So I'm squeezing as I pull down and pull away. And then at the end, I just kind of twist and break it off. Okay. Now, I can put these in the fridge so that they're really maintaining their shape, because they're a little bit sticky. The last time I made it, I think the dough had a little bit more time to rest, so the starches kind of got absorbed better, so it wasn't quite as sticky. But while the oil's heating, I'm going to put it in the fridge. So when I go to pick them up, they're a little bit more stable, and I don't mess up the design of them. Okay, so this is going in the fridge just for a few minutes. Or I'm going to try to get it in the fridge. Okay. Do you have any questions so far? Yeah, nothing you said? Sorry, I'm never in my fridge. So I'm trying to shove them in. All right. I think that will work. They're probably going to be funny shape. So now, if I was taking this dough and I was doing a cream puff, I may as well show you while I'm here and I'm waiting for the oil to heat up. I don't know if you guys have these, but they are cookie scoops. I have them in every single size that they make. because it's really, really handy to have kind of an even scoop for when you're making muffins, when you're making veggie balls. It just makes things closer in terms of the amount for each one, so the amount is the same. So again, depending on the size of the cream puff that you want, I use this one, which is, that's a good question, what size is it? It's probably 1.5 tablespoons, but I'm gonna give it like a full, like a generous. So this is not a level scoop, it's just gonna be like that. And then I'm gonna plop that on a pan. And that's gonna be my cream puff. I'm gonna bake it up. And again, it's not going to get huge. So if I wanted it bigger, I'd use one of the bigger ones. It's gonna get a little bit bigger, but it's gonna be super airy and crispy. And it's genuinely just delicious. All right, let's see what's happening. That oil is starting to get hot. I don't know that I have, the only thing I don't like about using something like this is I'm guessing on the temperature. And sometimes when you guess on the temperature, the first few don't work out quite as well as they should. This one, nope, that's not the right one. I feel like I have a, yeah. Nope, that's not it. I feel like when I'm standing here and I'm waiting to see what the right temperature is, because it's not in a pot, so I can't hook it to the side. It just takes too long, and I'm usually not patient enough. But if I put the churro dough in and it browns too quickly on the outside and it's gooey on the inside, I know it was too hot. And if it is super greasy, it means it was too cold. So for that reason, it is super handy if you have a deep fryer and it's out and it has oil in it to use it. Not necessary, but it's makes it a little bit more foolproof. Okay, so it just moves so slowly, this thermometer, and my instant read one doesn't go up this high. So, yeah. Question? Okay. So what I was saying, the question was, even though the dough was a little bit stickier than it should have been, I think just because I wasn't patient enough, and I didn't really give it the time it needed. The question was, could I have just put it into the deep fry, to the hot oil? Yes, but it would have, because I used a star tip, it had some grooves. So I know if I went to go pick it up, I would probably ruin those grooves a little bit. And if I tried to pipe directly into the oil, which we'll try with one, you're going to get a swirly churro versus a nice straight one. So I prefer to pipe them on the parchment paper. If I had starched the parchment paper, I wasn't expecting it to be sticky. If I had starched the parchment paper, I probably could have gotten it right in. But since I'm waiting for the oil to heat, I may as well use that time efficiently. God forbid I use that time to clean up my mess. And by the time this session is over, I'm going to be too tired to clean it up. It's the story of my life. All right. This is claiming that this oil is only 200 degrees, which I really don't believe is true based on how it's shimmering. So I'm going to assume that it is a little bit hotter. So let me go take those churros out. And just those few minutes made it that I can manipulate them better. And even this cream puff, you see, is no longer sticking on my hand just because it had a few seconds just to let those starches get absorbed. Now, there was no room in my fridge, so I made a mess trying to shove them in. So they're not nearly as straight as they were a few minutes ago. So you don't want to put a ton of the churros in at once. Oh, I definitely should have wheat starched that. Hang on. It is totally stuck to my parchment paper. So I'm going to throw a little bit of wheat starch on there. Let's see if I can roll them without ruining them. Okay, that's good. So I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but I just put a little bit of wheat starch sprinkle, and I'm just kind of gently rolling, trying not to ruin the nice grooves that I created. And that one is all set now. And to this one. So again, if I'd been patient and just waited 10 minutes, the dough probably would have been fine. But I wasn't patient because I feel like I'm boring you guys. All right, so this is going to go in very, very careful. Okay, into the hot oil. Oops. You don't want to crowd them for a variety of reasons. If you put too many in, the oil temperature will drop too much, and then it won't maintain the right heat. And also, if you crowd them, they're going to, oops, I just got a drop of water. Let me be careful. You have to be super careful when you're doing anything with hot oil to make sure no water gets near it, because that's when it sparks up and does that horrible explosion and you get burned. So I don't know if you can see these great because I have such a mess here and I'm not quite the right angle. But they're starting to get browned, but they're not quite ready yet. And then what I did beforehand was I did cinnamon sugar. And what I do is I just put it in a sandwich, in a regular brown sandwich lunch bag. So that way I can really toss it around and shake it. You can put it on a plate and roll it, whatever you like. So, oh my God, they smell so good. We need smell-o-vision. I was amazed when I made these just how light and airy they were. They actually genuinely exceeded my expectations, which doesn't happen too often. I'm going to go get a paper towel over here so that I can let them drain on that for a couple of seconds before I toss them in cinnamon sugar. Be right back. Okay. And they feel really, really light. And what I'll do when this show is over is I'll pipe out the remaining ones. And I'm going to fry some, and I'm going to put some in frozen, just uncooked and frozen, and see what happens there. So I can play around a little bit for you guys. All right. So those feel like they are done. So you, Sarah, is that you asking or somebody else? Okay, Sarah's being a pain in my butt. She just asked, how do you know they're done? Number one, they're a nice golden brown color. Number two, it's around the time, which I don't have my recipe printed out because I have 2 copies of the choux pastry or choux pastry. But I know about the time it takes, and I can feel them when I lift them up. They're nice and light. So it feels like the inside is cooked. Otherwise, if they feel wet and heavy, then I feel like they're probably still not cooked. The batter's not done. And sometimes it is just as simple. Take one out, let it cool for a couple seconds, and test it. So if I took them out and broke one open and it wasn't cooked, I'd throw them right back in. Once I put them in cinnamon sugar, then I'm in a little bit more trouble because the cinnamon sugar would burn. Okay. So what I did here, because I'm wondering what's happening, is my oil, remember I said to you that it felt like it was getting too hot? I put it down a little too low. So these took a little bit longer than they normally would. And now I'm putting them on a paper towel and just letting them drain to get some of that oil off. And turn that off. And that's all they need. And then they're going to go out. They're very hot in the bag. Oh, I so wish this was a live demo in terms of being somewhere so you guys could taste these, but they are outrageous. Okay. Perfect. All right. So I don't know if you can see those, but they are fantastic. They need to cool down a tiny bit before I taste them. I'm going to move this oil before I try to move it and burn myself. All right, so we made tacos 2 ways. We did the vegetables, which is my favorite because I love vegetables. And we did the jackfruit ones, Remember, on the site, there's also the mushroom tacos, which are, I like them more than I like the jackfruit ones, but that's my daughter did the exact opposite. So now you have tacos 3 ways. And you can think about it. You can do one day Brussels sprout ones. You can do potato ones. You can do whatever your favorite vegetables are, and change up Taco Tuesday a little bit. Make them in a hard shell. Make them in a soft shell. Make them as an enchilada. The vegetarian chili recipe is an amazing filling as well, especially for enchiladas. So you can start to add more and more variety, but still kind of have a theme to make your life a little bit easier in terms of planning. We did some salsa. We didn't get around to the guacamole, but that's just mashing up an avocado and adding a few tablespoons of that salsa we made, and maybe a little bit more lime and a little bit more salt. And if you like it spicy, I love a little bit of chipotle in there. I think that is about it. Does anybody have any questions? The question was, if someone doesn't like cinnamon for the churros, what else could they use? Number one, how do you not like cinnamon? Would be my first question. I think what I would do instead is I would just do granulated sugar. So you have that crunch without that cinnamon flavor. But you could add other spices to it if you wanted. But churros is typically and traditionally it has the cinnamon sugar. Anything else? No? Nothing? Okay, I know that I think there's a little bit of a delay in terms of when I'm filming and when you guys are seeing it, just a few seconds. So I'll give you another couple of seconds. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. This is not my comfort zone, but it was a bit of a disaster here and there, but I'm glad that you were able to bear with me. And again, you may not love to cook, but sometimes you do need to cook for love, and we're here for you in whatever way we can. It is Giving Tuesday next week for nonprofits, and one of the things. Oh, sorry, no, it's Giving Tuesday today. It's a good thing Sarah's in my ear for nonprofits, and we really wanted to give to you guys. We know that this is a really, really rough time for everybody, and people are facing a lot of uncertainties. If you can and you're able to send a donation our way, we would really appreciate it. If you can't, please do the push-ups for PKU, because Nutrish is going to give us $10 for each person who films that and has the right tag on it. That's all on the site. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and cheers to you, and may this be the only Corona you encounter in the next month. Stay safe, everybody. Take care. I'm going to go turn you off. Any other questions before I go? I am totally getting tequila, by the way. This is not cutting it. Take care, guys. Oh, let's see. How do I unlive this? There we go.